So Korean has two number systems. Now, if this is new information to you, please learn numbers first and then come back to this video. There are Sino-Korean numbers and pure Korean numbers. Sino meaning China, so Sino-Korean numbers are ones that come from the Chinese language, and pure Korean numbers are ones that were developed in Korea. And depending on what you're trying to do with a number will determine whether you use Sino-Korean or pure Korean numbers. So that's what I'm going to cover today, the most common uses for each number system. But first, I want to give an extra thanks to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. You are the reason I can keep doing what I'm doing. So thank you for your support. And if you are also interested in becoming a supporter of my content, I'll have links in the description box below for how you can do that. Okay, so if you're just counting numbers for no reason, like you're just saying 1, 2, 3, you can use either system. Sino-Korean numbers, 1, 2, 3, or pure Korean numbers, 하나, 둘, 셋. Besides that though, each system has its own uses. So first, let's talk about Sino-Korean numbers. Again, 1, 2, 3, etc. Sino-Korean words, not just numbers, but anything Sino-Korean, typically has a more formal, a more fancy feeling than anything pure Korean, including numbers. So if you count something with Sino-Korean numbers, it sounds a bit more official, so you can guess that any sort of official countdown is going to use Sino-Korean numbers and not pure Korean numbers. If NASA was in Korea and they were doing the countdown from 10 to 1, in Korean, well, they would definitely pick Sino-Korean numbers to do it. 10, 9, 8, 7, like that. Next, any sort of large number, no matter what you're doing with it, any large number will also use Sino-Korean. So what is a large number? Well, 100%, any number above 99 is going to be counted now with Sino-Korean numbers. So even if you're using pure Korean numbers and you only want to use pure Korean numbers up until 99, that's okay. Once you hit 100, you go back to Sino-Korean numbers, and 100 would be 100. No matter what you're counting. But it's actually not that high because most people nowadays will switch to Sino-Korean numbers no matter what they're counting once they've gone above 40 or 50, depending on the person. So anything above that, it's safe to simply switch to Sino-Korean numbers. And some people may even start earlier than that. I've heard some people switch to Sino-Korean above 20. It's less common, but you might hear it too. At least though, 40 to 50, you'll be safe. Next, amounts of money are going to be the next common thing you're going to need to count. Any sort of money, from Korean won to dollars to cents to anything like that, will also use Sino-Korean numbers. No matter how small you're counting, it's going to be Sino-Korean. In fact, the smallest bill that you can even get is 1,000won, 1,000won for 1,000 won. So definitely anything with money is going to be Sino-Korean only. The next thing you need to know is that anytime you're using a number on its own, so anytime you're using just numbers, it's going to be Sino-Korean. For example, phone numbers are going to be Sino-Korean. Now, there is an exception for 0. Sometimes when you're using phone numbers, it's common to say 0 as kong, which is pure Korean. But besides 0, any phone number is going to be in Sino-Korean. Also, addresses and zip codes, all of those are Sino-Korean. The number of the bus, your apartment number, the number of the floor that you live on. Any of this will also be done with Sino-Korean because it's just a bunch of numbers. So if you take bus number 5000, that would be the 5000번 버스. If you live in apartment 100, 100호. Or if your zip code is 90210, these are all done with Sino-Korean numbers. The same applies to dates. 2024, this would be 2024년, the current month that it is, so January, 1월, like that, 2월 for February, as well as the day. If it's the first, that's 1, 10 for the 10th, like that. Next, anytime that you're measuring something, we'll also use Sino-Korean. Specifically, the distance, the weight of something, the volume, the length, or the height. If it's 30 degrees outside, well, the counter for degrees is 도. So you would say 30도. Note though that Korea uses Celsius, so 30 degrees with humidity over there is actually really hot. Basically, if any sort of tool exists to measure something, you're going to use Sino-Korean numbers when you count it. So this also includes a thermometer, like I said, a ruler, a scale, anything like that. Now, a big exception to this is when you're talking about time. Time depends on whether you're using minutes and seconds or hours. Minutes would use the counter 분, and seconds would use the counter 초. And these both use Sino-Korean numbers. 10 minutes, 10분, 10 seconds, 10초. But hours use the counter 시, and these use pure Korean numbers. So 한 시 for 1 o'clock, like that. Now let's talk about some of the common ways that you'll use pure Korean numbers. So 하나, 둘, 셋. Again, since Sino-Korean numbers are used for any number above 40 or 50, or in fact sometimes even 20 or 30, pure Korean will usually be used for much smaller amounts. So anytime you're just counting to a very small number, it's more common to use pure Korean numbers for that. For example, if you're going to take a picture, you would say 하나, 둘, 셋. You wouldn't say 1, 2, 3 to take a photo. Small numbers like that sound a little bit awkward if you're not using pure Korean numbers. Again, that's for just counting the numbers themselves. Next, anything that's alive is going to use pure Korean numbers. So that includes people, which you can count with the counter 명. 한 명, 두 명, one person, two people, like that. As well as the animal counter, 마리, 한 마리, 두 마리. So one or two animals. So anything that's alive, but also your age, which uses the counter 살. So you can think of this kind of like something that's alive. 살 would use pure Korean numbers, so 한 살, 두 살, 열 살. Like that for 10-year-old, 20살 for 20, and so on. One more thing I wanted to say about 살 is that it is okay to keep using this one even beyond 20, 30, 40, 50. You will see people refer to other people who are older with pure Korean numbers, even up to 80 or 90 sometimes, but you don't have to if you can't think of that number. But if there is any counter that still would use higher numbers, at least up until 99, it would be this one. Now, if you want to use Sino-Korean numbers for age instead, you should also change this counter to a different one, 세. 세 has the same meaning as 살, but it's used with a Sino-Korean number. So if you do want to switch over to Sino-Korean at any amount, even at 10 or 20, 30, anything, it's fine to do it with 세 and a Sino-Korean number. Just know that this one is slightly more formal, slightly more polite sounding than this one, so it's not bad if you decide to use this instead. And perhaps most importantly to keep in mind, pure Korean numbers are used for counting most objects, so things that you can touch. Sino-Korean numbers are more often used for counting intangible things. So I mentioned things that you can measure, so kilometers, temperature, bus numbers, things that aren't physical. While pure Korean numbers are more often used for counting physical things, things that you can touch, or people or animals, actual things. But this isn't always true. And we've seen a few exceptions already, but it's a decent tip if you're stuck and are just trying to remember which number system to use with a certain counter. For example, a common exception was counting age, as we said, which is done with pure Korean numbers, even though that's not tangible. And there are other exceptions too. Hour, which I mentioned, which would use pure Korean, or if you're counting the number of times that someone does something, that is 번. Also not physical, but you would use pure Korean numbers with that. 한 번, 두 번. But for the most part, it applies. For example, if you wanted to guess how to count rocks, since it's something physical, you can just take a guess that it's going to use pure Korean and you would be correct. Or if you wanted to count degrees and you couldn't remember which system to use, well, that's going to be Sino-Korean since that's intangible. Or what if you wanted to count the pages in a book? Well, if you're counting the physical sheets of paper, that's going to be pure Korean and there's a counter you'd use, 장. But if you're just counting how many pages a book has in general, not the actual pages inside of it, you can use 페이지 and Sino-Korean. Of course, you still need to know a counter that you can use, but this should at least help get you half of the way there. So, are there any other tips that you have for using these number systems or remembering which one to use? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Again, huge thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members for helping to support this content. If you would also like to become one of my supporters and help me to make more videos like these, please check out the links in the description box below. And I will see you again next time. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.